Welcome to the Relationship Unconscious podcast series. I'm Dr. James Tobin, a licensed psychologist and psychotherapist. My clinical practice is based in Newport Beach, California, and I work with individuals, couples, and families primarily on their relationship issues. I also conduct psychotherapy groups and interactive educational workshops on romantic relationship issues and parenting concerns. In this podcast series, Relationship Unconscious, I focus on how the mind's unconscious influences the way we think, feel, and behave in our relationships. Although we probably like to think our conscious intentions and desires determine how our relationships play out, unfortunately, that's not really the case. Freud established the significance of the mind's unconscious in determining many aspects of our intrapsychic and interpersonal lives, and since the time of his contributions, our knowledge base has evolved considerably. Drawing from all I've learned from my patients in 17 years of clinical practice, it's my hope that this podcast series will capture just how the unconscious impacts our relationships, and perhaps even more importantly, will help listeners navigate the mind's tendencies, especially those tendencies that hinder the attainment of healthy, fulfilling relationships. If you'd like to learn more about my psychotherapy practice, group and workshop offerings, and other services I provide, please visit my website at www.jamestobinphd.com. That's www.jamestobinphd.com, or email me at jt@jamestobinphd.com. Enactment. Enactment is a term used by psychologists and theorists that refers to an experiential or relational dynamic created unwittingly by unconscious forces. Perhaps the most significant hypothesis put forth by Freud is that a person is doomed to repeat what he or she does not remember. What Freud meant by this statement is that experience, which is not represented by the mind nor emotionally worked through, is sequestered in the unconscious. Once housed in the unconscious, the circumstances of an experience, the roles played by different persons involved, the specific elements of the interaction, the feeling states produced, and so on, are primed to be replayed or repeated, often years later, with remarkable similarity to the original event. The original event is enacted, or perhaps more accurately, re-enacted. Freud emphasized the uncanny quality of how particular events and interpersonal transactions, often from very early in one's life, become manifested again in contemporary life. And many patients present for treatment recognizing and being startled by scenarios in which they are currently embedded that are eerily like previous events in their lives. Some patients even say that they feel fated to ending up in the same and often detrimental situations or predicaments again and again, as if some religious or supernatural force is at work, blocking their ability to enjoy more positive and fulfilling experiences. What is perhaps the most disturbing element of enactments is that the repetition of experience defies conscious awareness and decision-making. It is often the case that unresolved emotional pain from one's early development will be played out in adult life, even despite the best efforts of an individual who is actively and thoughtfully trying to avoid past circumstances and cultivate different ones. For example, a woman who as a child was abandoned by the premature death of her father recognizes that in her adult life, she tends to gravitate toward a series of professional situations and romantic partners that ultimately lead to her, yet again, experiencing abandonment by a beloved manager who moves on to another company, a lover who leaves her for another woman, or the tragic death of her best friend who was killed in a car accident. Despite this woman's best efforts, she cannot seem to shake the abandonment theme that has dominated her life. Freud argued that repeated occurrences along similar thematic lines are not coincidental. He indicated instead that one's current life is essentially predetermined by one's past. Freud theorized that a portion of emotional experience early in life is not represented psychically, and because of this, is directed into the unconscious as strings of traumatic material untethered to any central narrative or cohesive sense of self. This traumatic material cannot be integrated, resulting in a kind of fragmentation of one's emotional and cognitive life. For Freud, the mind recreates experience, repeating what it does not remember, so that an individual has an opportunity to utilize the enactment for emotional integration and synthesis. By this I mean that the replay or facsimile of a painful or difficult experience in contemporary life ideally would allow a person to link it to the strings of related traumatic experience that lay dormant in the unconscious. Once this linking occurs, elements of the original event residing in the unconscious are hooked, and just as in fishing, pulled to the surface for examination, integration, and resolution. This linking process is not easy and often does not occur spontaneously, not even in the actual occurrence of enactments. Most people need the help of a psychotherapist who creates an environment for the patient that facilitates a process by which contemporary structures of experience, the roles you always seem to find yourself in, the people you seem to gravitate toward and who gravitate toward you, the degree to which things work out for you or don't, the feelings you generally feel, gradually become connected to previously unresolved material. As these connections solidify and gain clarity, the unrecognized aspects of prior experience are made visible. Often this is an emotionally painful process, but the result can be well worth it. A person's awareness of and insight into the cause-effect dynamics that have shaped one's life may be finally illuminated and utilized for change. Thanks for listening to the Relationship Unconscious podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to react to something you've heard, I encourage you to email me at jt@jamestobinphd.com. Also, please add a rating and review the Relationship Unconscious podcast on iTunes. Thanks for being such a great support of this podcast. Tune in next time for more on how the unconscious influences our relationships.